It was the beginning of September, and the weather was nice. According to the weather forecast on TV and radio, the next few days were supposed to be warm. Everyone seems to like nice weather, especially with positive circumstances. On Wednesday evening, Chris called me. He was excited, boasting about having bought a new car, a 7-seater Chevrolet Captiva. He made good money, and I did not think that it was appropriate to envy him, since I believed the time would come for me. The new car is not the most important element of this story, although this story certainly would not exist at all if it was not for that Chevrolet. "Hello, Kevin. Do you have any plans for the weekend?" he asked. After that question, I quickly realized that something was going to happen and involved alcohol, so I decided that my console and the game I had just bought would have to wait until Monday. "No, I don't. What would you suggest?" I questioned, almost hearing the sound of a beer being opened inside my mind. "I thought we could go on a 3-day trip to the campsite, drink in the car and have some fun. We can grill a little or have a bonfire or both," he laughed. "I have already talked about this with Agnes. Peter, Paul, and Olive also agreed to come. My brother Casper is still undecisive, but I know Olive and I am sure that she will convince him. You're the only one left. So what do you think?" Chris asked, showing his excitement. Like always, I was the last to know, and that thought irritated me a little. However, I decided to agree without thinking too much about. It could be interesting. "That is great. We have a full lineup," he said. "I will go shopping for basic things tomorrow, and we will settle the money after everything is done. I will tell you the details later." All right. See you then." I hung up, excited about the news. I could not wait for Friday to come, so I decided to turn the console and play some games for a while before going to bed. I thought about going shopping the next day as well to stock up on provisions, thinking that we only had 3 hard days ahead of us, and it would be a pity to waste it by running to the store. If we were lucky enough to have any store nearby, since it was unlikely for us to put up our tent near any kind of civilization. I fell asleep thinking about everything, like a small child who cannot wait for the trip to get started. The next day I woke up quite late. Both hands were set to 10 o'clock on the clock hanging on the wall. This annoyed me. I quickly got up on my feet, got dressed, and ran down the stairs to the kitchen. "Hi, Mom," I greeted. "Why did you wake up so late? I thought you wanted to get up at 8. You must have been playing until late," she said while chopping vegetables. "I had a hard time falling asleep, and I have the day off anyway," I replied, stretching my arms and yawning. I made a quick cup of coffee while I told my mother everything about my weekend trip. She wished me to have fun, since I was old enough to not require her permission. I finished my coffee quickly and took my backpack from the hallway, where it was laying for the last couple of days, to do the planned shopping. Fortunately, I did not have to explore the entire store, and instead I headed straight to the liquor section. I wanted to buy some more alcohol, considering that it would not go to waste if some of it were left. I reached for 2 bottles of mid-shelf whiskey and 3 neat ones. Later I went to the meat aisle to buy some pork and beef steaks before checking out. I packed part of my purchases in my backpack, and I carried the rest of them in a bag that I bought at the checkout. Upon returning home, I took the shopping to my room, washed my hands, and went to get dinner with my family. Afterward, I tried to find some activities to kill time before Friday. I mowed the lawn, cleaned my room, drank a beer, and turned my console on, always thinking about the next day. I had not gone anywhere for vacation, not even for a short period of time. Chris called me in the evening and I answered it quickly, impatient. "Hi." "Hello," I answered. "We will be at your place tomorrow around 9:30 a.m. Be ready. I found a nice place that is close to a forest, a lake, and a clearing. We will drive about 160 miles on south outside of Omaha. I think you'll have done a lot of work before we get there." Chris laughed. "And I like that," I replied, laughing. "See you tomorrow then. Sleep well." I will. See you tomorrow. I put the phone back on the desk and finished the game before going to sleep. The next day, Chris and the group were perfectly on time. The car was impressive and looked as if it had just left the showroom. However, I kept wondering why would he need such a big car. One of my thoughts was that he was perhaps thinking very far ahead and would not change the car for a bigger one in the future. Whatever. At least you can fit a bigger amount of people inside of it, which is the most important thing. I greeted everyone and put everything into the trunk before getting into the car. Peter was sitting in the front seat, the girls took the back seats, and I joined Paul and Casper. I'll check the GPS and we will be good to go, Chris, the driver, announced to us. I admired the light-colored leather interior for a while and the large and comfortable space of the car until we finally set off. We did not have to wait long. Peter did not wait any time as he pulled out a bottle of whiskey and styrofoam cups from the glove compartment, pouring a little for himself and passing it on. Now we can start the weekend, he claimed, as he passed the bottle and cups to Paul. After everyone had a drink, I suggested a toast to a successful trip, and so we did. The whiskey was really good, as always. We made a few stops on the way to stretch our limbs and use the restroom at the stations, but the alcohol was going to our heads with every kilometer that we did. We arrived at the place feeling relaxed, so much that I did not even notice we rode on a bumpy forest road, that for a good 20 minutes. I do not remember when Chris left the main road at all. At first, I thought it was a joke when he announced that this was the end of the route. I even looked at the GPS to check if it was true, and it was. The GPS said, "You have arrived to your destination." I glanced at my watch, and it was already 1:20 p.m., the estimated time of arrival. I knew that it would be a bit remote, but I did not expect it to this extent. We got out of the car, staggering a little while walking. After a thorough reconnaissance, I found the place to be quite nice. I could not imagine that everything Chris had mentioned would be so close together. A glade, a lake, and a forest all around. It was scary and delightful at the same time. Not that I'm some kind of horror movie fan or anything of that sort. Moments after we talked and Chris made up for a few lost cues, it was time to start putting up the 3 tents we had brought. 2 for 2 people and 1 for 3. We tackled the task, and we were so clumsy that it took us over an hour to finish it. We had better luck lighting the grill. We pulled out blankets and deck chairs, and our dream relaxation finally began. We ate a lot and drank even more, as many empty bottles and cans were landing in the garbage bag. Time passed as the sun was heading towards the west. "You know what? I'm bored with sitting here," Olive said. "Let's go for a walk in the forest before it gets dark." "Are you crazy? Why would you want to go there?" Paul protested. "We will get lost, we are drunk." "I like the idea," Peter seconded, and Agnes nodded to him. I also liked it like Casper, but Chris remained indifferent. "In that case it is unanimous," Olive said, in a happy tone. "Let's go!" I screamed, having difficulty to get up from the deck chair. We went to the forest and we found leaves, needles, sticks, and some mushrooms. Nothing extraordinary, but we did not go to admire nature. We went... Why did we go there? There was probably no reason, but it was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. We were intoxicated with alcohol, laughing loudly and scaring birds and squirrels with our voices, but in a very good mood. Some fell down, blaming roots or protruding trunks for making them trip, but the truth was obvious to everyone. This also caused us to laugh and make stupid comments. We did not even look at our watches since we did not mind the passing of time. Instead, we kept walking. "Is it me, or has it suddenly gotten dark?" Paul asked. "I don't think so. You're just so drunk that see in different colors," Casper laughed. "You're probably right, but it feels weird." "You will probably have plenty of feelings today," I replied happily. "I don't doubt it," Paul said, tipping the bottle. "What is that? That thing in front of us?" Agnes pointed with her hand. "A building," Chris responded. "In the middle of the forest?" Peter questioned with incredulity. We decided to check it out instead of bothering to argue about what we were seeing, and there was indeed a building. Heck, even 2 or 3, but it was hard to tell as the first one stood alone while the second one seemed to be connected to another one. At first glance, they looked like temples, each one from a different religion, an old Christian church and something that looked like an Orthodox church, although I am not completely sure, combined with Asian architecture, perhaps Chinese. These structures were built of wood. They resembled temples, and I say resembled because the buildings had no religious symbols whatsoever, making it difficult to classify them. You could access to the place by a sort of medieval wooden porch used for defensive purposes, which was about 6 meters high and 15 meters long. This canopy, used as a gate, was completely unnecessary as the temples were inaccessible from all sides due to the lack of a fence. The construction would only make sense if some kind of fence existed at some point. We walked under the canopy and at the end of it, we found a newspaper of an unknown magazine laying on the ground. Although it looked new, the editors messed up and printed the year of publication as 2028, 10 years ahead. Our first thought was that Chris had read the number wrong because he was under the influence of alcohol, but everyone read it exactly like that. We then concluded that it had to be a simple editorial mistake. However, a certain headline caught my attention. 10 years after disappearance, and it read as follows. It has been 10 years since a group of 7 friends disappeared after going on a trip to the Ozaki area on 07/09/2018, and they have not returned to this day. No one has seen the missing Chevrolet, its driver, or the rest of the passengers. Multiple searches were made by relatives, residents, police, and special services of the area within a radius of 100 kilometers from the city. All kinds of searches have failed to yield even the slightest clue, including the involvement of the Interpol on suspicion of abduction. And yet, it was all in vain. The families had resigned themselves to the worst after so much time with traces. It will always remain a mystery what happened to this group of friends during their trip. Anyone who might know something is asked to contact the editorial office, the police, or friends and family, even after all this time having passed. Watch over their souls. I immediately read the short article to the others, and everyone was blown away without exception. It made no sense. We thought that maybe someone knew that we would be here and decided to make a stupid joke. Chris said that the owner of the place must have known that we would come, but how would they know what kind of car we were in and how many people was in the group? That led us to rule out the only suspect. How would they know that we would come to this place anyway? You know what? Let's go back. It is late, and I did not even want to go for a walk in the first place. Olive was freaking out. Listen guys, I know it is weird, but wake the hell up. We are alive. The date, the car, the number of people, and the place are correct, but it is not logical at all. We have only been here a few hours. This article is probably some kind of collective hallucination. Someone has to admit that they put drugs in our alcohol, Agnes said, looking angry. No one admitted to doing so, of course, and it did not seem like we were surprised to hear about it. Nobody knew anything about it. We were starting to get paranoid, and I thought that maybe I fell asleep a long time ago, and this was just a heavily twisted dream. The pinches, however, hurt. Everyone stopped talking as soon as we heard strange sounds coming from the first building on the right. It sounded like screams interspersed with loud moans, and only for a few seconds. We figured that it was probably just wild animals. We turned around and what we saw blew our minds, colloquially speaking. The scenery did not change at all. In front of us, the mysterious building stood up, while the wooden porch and the same objects were behind us. Fuck, some of us shouted. What is this? Olive was panicking. We retreated in terror, but an instant turn by 180 did not bring any effect. We turned back and forth, possessed, but we saw the same thing each time, the temples. We heard the disturbing sound from a nearby building once again, and it was clear that it was not an animal but something else instead, something that was suffering torment. The sound, upon close listening, certainly did not belong to any animal, yet it was hard to compare it to a human. I perceived something like a plea for help in the scream. I do not know where it came from, and I would prefer not knowing. If I were for me, I would rather stand there until the problem of not having a way back solved itself. But I know that it would be foolish and naive. What was happening must have a reason, something beyond us, some mysterious force, something undefined. And one thing was certain. This was happening. This was reality. Not a hallucination, not a dream. Reality. I will not go into details because they do not have any great meaning or significance. Instead, I will get straight to the point. We entered what it looked like a Christian temple that did not resemble a religious place in any way from the inside. We saw stairs to the upper floor, corridors, and a lot of doors. Cobwebs, dust, musty smell, creaky floor, and omnipresent darkness caused by the lack of windows decorated the place, so we used our phones like our only sources of light to find that it got lost in the darkness. And if it was not enough, empty frames with no pictures hanged crookedly on the wall and filled the room with an extra pinch of uncertainty. And then a scream. A clear, very distinct and also very strange scream. We were walking along a dark, musty corridor in the depths of the building as our common sense was telling us not to go deeper and to run away instead. But it was impossible to escape. We tried many times, perhaps not enough. Should we have tried harder? It does not matter anymore. The only thing that matters is what took place next. At the end of the corridor, there was a room that seemed to be a huge living room like those you can see in mafia movies and gangster family meeting. Perhaps it was even a little bigger, but it did not stand out in any special way besides its size, since it was filled with a lot of old furniture, scattered chairs, and broken cupboards. The table, although dirty and dusty, was in quite good condition. The scream was heard once again, but this time it seemed to come from all sides at the same time, with different levels of intensity. This was normal if we consider that it did not belong to only one being. The ceiling rumbled, the floor shook, the drought increased. Something was moving, and we grabbed for anything at hand to defend ourselves, from chair legs, old boards, to a shovel that I had found. I have no idea why was the shovel there, but I was glad of it. We faced the corridor while standing in a semicircle as the girls illuminated with their phones, allowing us to see the threat that was coming toward us. Humanoid creatures emerged from the narrow corridor in great quantity, one on top of the other, some of them on 2 legs, others on 4, bending in different directions like you normally see in exorcism movies, skinny, slimy creatures with their mouths wide open that resembled humans. The easiest way to describe them is thinking about some artistic works in which similar creatures inhabited hell, and the color of their skin. Although it was dark, I was certain that their skin was blue-gray, like that of a drowning man. Once the creatures got close enough for us to start defending ourselves, we struck blindly several times. A terrifying scream chilled the blood in our veins, and even though we were shaking with fear, we also knew that we had to act. Some fell, partially blocking the passage, but the monsters did not stop coming. Instead, they tried to pave their way toward us, knocking a wide table over and making a makeshift blockade. The table was heavy and appeared to be made of oak. We managed to find a way out through a door covered by an old closet. As strange as it might be, the way seemed to be clear. We ran ahead and closed the door behind, only to hear something slamming on the floor 2 seconds later. The makeshift barricade had overcome. We started running to get away from the creatures, and we managed to find a back exit to the outside. We were energized by the adrenaline, as our hearts were pounding like crazy in our chests and our legs felt like cotton wool. "Holy shit! What the hell was that?" Chris shouted, grabbing his head in disbelief. "Where are Agnes and Paul?" Olive asked, crying out of fear. "They were right behind me," I replied. "But they are not there," Casper pointed out. Screams and shouts were now mixed with human sounds before the intense sounds stopped suddenly, and then complete silence. Silence made everything freeze, including nature surrounding us. The uncertainty did not last long before a rumbling noise filled the whole building, sounding as if a herd of wild animals was running through it, and we knew exactly what it was. The rumble was getting louder, so we had no choice but to move. Escaping to the next building was completely out of question, since it implied another risk. Still, I have no idea what force pushed us to cross the threshold. The interior did not stand out from the first one we entered, but the building was certainly bigger, with wider and longer corridors as well as higher rooms and stairs. A whole bunch of stairs. I do not know where they led to, and we did not venture to the higher levels either. Looking back, I have the impression that we were puppets with strings attached that someone was happily pulling the strings to. Finally, we were cut off. The door slammed shut behind us, impossible to open again, which pushed us to walk forward and past each door carefully to the next intersection of corridors or stairs. Each step we took was very precise and careful, since we were sneaking and not walking. This silence was again broken by rumbling, but much more intense this time because everything was shaking. The walls, the ceiling, the floor. We were hopeless, standing in the middle of the intersecting corridors, so we decided to turn our backs to each other to know where would the creature come out of. They came out from every possible direction at the same time, breaking through the floor, ceiling, and walls, flooding the corridors. I then decided to make a sort of charge, hitting a few creatures along the way while the others were running after me. However, I couldn't allow myself to make sure that was the case. No looking back, I said to myself. The shovel in my hands was effectively knocking down more and more monsters, which helped me make my way into a large candlelit room, decorated with a pale red carpet in a wavy pattern. Inside, I was surrounded with no means of escape. Although the shovel was still with me, I no longer had the opportunity to use it. As I stood there, I realized that I was alone. My friends were left behind, and I did not even know if they were alive. I would have to be the most optimistic person in the world to believe that nothing had happened to them, so all I could do now was wait. I closed my eyes and I hoped for my end to be painless, in a silent, meaningless hope. My whole life flashed through my mind, resembling film in old cameras. It is amazing how many memories, even the most buried ones, can come back to the mind of a person who is bordering on death while counting down the last seconds of life. "Open your eyes," a calm but firm voice asked. And so I did. What was the point? I was about to die, and it did not make a difference whether I looked at my tormentor or not. "Hello," said the man in the white suit. "You are probably wondering many things. Is any of this is real? What happened to your friends? Why are you here? Luckily, I can give you the answers. If only I had enough time, I would answer even more. I think I could even guess questions that you have not yet asked yourself in your mind, but this is not the purpose of our meeting. You do not have to do anything but to listen to me." I did as he said, and I continued listening to him. "I will not tell you who I am. You only need to know that I am the one who always gives second chances. Always. Is it real? Yes, it is. I dare say that it is far more real than the human mind could even comprehend, and you are here because I have chosen you. To use a more interesting expression, I have marked you. Why you? That is a little complicated to answer, so let me put it this way. Each one of you has certain imperfections that will significantly affect your environment in the future and even lead to terrible events. However, these events will only happen when the chain formed by all of you has all its links. I have been watching you for a long time. You have a great potential that you consciously conceal from the world, and you are wasting your time by being afraid to step out. You are constantly balancing between your own beliefs and the contempt associated with them. I will not explain further because you know exactly what I am talking about. I am also sure that you are wondering what happened to your friends, so let me satisfy your curiosity. They will soon join those who are trapped here as their souls go to perdition, transforming them into shadows eternally suffering of their afflictions. They will suffer longer than humanity is written to exist. This is the case for moments like these. I mentioned the marking and the links in the chain, and you are one of them. You are a link that faces a choice. If you decide to sacrifice your friends, you will achieve an incredible success that could change the fate of the entire world. However, you will live until the end, knowing that you have built your power on the grave of your closest friends, the only true friends who are loyal and devoted to you. You may also save their lives, but it would cost your demise. If you save their lives, you will lose them and be left alone forever. That is what I am talking about. Are you willing to sacrifice? What will you sacrifice? One choice will give you power, but you will lose loved ones. The other will give you peace of mind, but the events of your life will unfold in such a way that they will end up hating you. You will be left alone after saving their lives while they are unaware of it, considering you as the enemy. You are about to make a choice, a hard choice, car or truck. On Wednesday evening, Chris called me. He was excited, boasting about having bought a new car, a 7-seater Chevrolet Captiva. I knew the question he would ask me, like I also knew what I had to answer. Hello, Kevin. Do you have any plans for the weekend? Hi. Yes, I do. I am going to be extremely busy since I have a lot of work to do, I replied, as the lies were hardly coming out of my tight throat. That is too bad. I thought we could go on a little trip together. Maybe next week? Sorry, but I cannot. I am on a tight schedule next week as well. All right then. In that case, I will not push you. Take care. See you later. Bye. I hung up the phone and wiped the salty tears off my cheeks. My room in the family home was very slick. I was struggling to get used to the idea I was being forced to stare at white blank walls with large Venetian mirrors from now on. It was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the exact time when a doctor came to see me, accompanied with a distinguished specialist. I only ended up here because I told my story. I got a phobia. I started to avoid people dressed in white because I am afraid of them. Hell, in this place, all of them are dressed in white. Everything is white. My psyche is on the verge of collapse, and nobody wants to believe my truth, the truth that has robbed me of my friends. The truth robbed me of everything, including the meaning of life. The white door opened. 2 doctors approached me, and I could see the tight-lipped nurses standing behind them, with their straitjackets ready, waiting for me to make a mistake. I knew very well one of the doctors, the head of the hospital. He had been coming to see me every day for the last 2 years. He introduced me to his guest, and I completely stopped paying attention to the psychiatrist that I already knew. I recognized him. Nothing had changed. The man in white came to me. It was not a doctor, not even a man. Why was he here? All the emotions that I experimented in that building came back to me duplicated, and I could not stand it. I threw myself at him, shouting and asking to have my friends back. I begged to make my choice again. I finally understood what sacrifice was, and I understood that not every person is capable of sacrifice. Sacrifice is like losing yourself. A small part of us dies with even the smallest sacrifice that we make, although it is necessary for the greater good. The question is whether the greater good is worthwhile. I will leave it for you to answer it. I will never have the opportunity to write about it again, not even to write at all. They stand by me all the time, they watch me. Sometimes I have the impression that there are more of them, Or maybe I am crazy. I do not know what is going on or what they want, but I can only offer you one piece of advice. Avoid people in white. They are everywhere.